Hey folks, it is April the 21st, and today we're going to go through our next and last unit, which is titled Global Conflicts. When I'm done with today's lecture, I'm going to save this as a PDF and post it on the Google Classroom for you so that you can follow along. Keep in mind that today your study island is due. I'm going to assign a new one tomorrow, but we're not going to have a lecture tomorrow or Friday. Tomorrow is going to be a work day for you. Friday is going to be a day where we're supposed to have the fun run thing. And so the students are scheduled to come here, but they only just told us that. And I don't pulled out to go help with the fun run or what. So it's going to be a weird schedule. So it's pretty much just going to be watch history show day. All right. So I think this is Monet. I think it is.
It's a nice place.
It's like you're looking through like a windshield. It's got a lot of rain on it. It's kind of neat.
And you're on the sidewalk.
Well, okay. So maybe you're breaking a few laws. And then you have the world's first car too. So yeah, there's some things going on.
Oh wow, it's a telephone.
All right, so global conflicts, 1914 to the present. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what is like the pivotal change in world history, and that's the First World War. And so all of those things that people in the West saw as like these glorious pinnacles of human achievement, such as industry and wealth and imperialism, is going to lead. It's going to lead to essentially the destruction of human life in such a small amount of time. It's going to blow people away. People are like, "Wow, we thought all these things were great," and instead of making industry to make machines, we made industry to kill all of our young men. You know, and so it was very traumatic for the world. A lot of things that have to do with like the arts and things like that are going to become a lot more cynical about the idea of modernity and progress. And people are like, is it all really that good after all? So it's going to be a big deal pickle. This is going to build some countries, and it's going to ruin some countries. Same with World War II. It's going to build some nations, and it's going to destroy certain nations. So I mean, be careful what you get into. War has unexpected consequences. It's pretty. Where is this at? I don't know where that's at. It's a library, though. Pretty neat library. I have a hard time reading there because I think I just look around and then I forget what book I had.
That seems.
If that reminds you of home, what are you doing here? All right. So vocabulary. So slide 104. Alliance. If you know one of these terms, don't have to write the definition down. All right. So, but if you do not know, write down as briefly as possible. Okay. Shorten it. Alliance, an association created to further the common interest of its members. This is we're talking about between countries. We are an alliance. We will fight on one another's side. We will have a trade alliance where we will give one another favorable trade. We won't tax each other. We'll make sure you get first dibs, and you'll do the same for us. It's like international friendship. Militarism. That's going to be a big part of nationalism, right? Policy of aggressive military preparedness. And before the First World War, that's going to be a big deal for a lot of countries. You have these young men growing up and loving their patria, their father. They're having this great history of the greatness of their ancestors. They're being told stories and singing songs of past war heroes and things like that. Hey, Bo, can you close that up for me? And it's in a competitive spirit to where we know that we can whip our neighbors who aren't as good as us, and they better watch it. Trench warfare. Conflict and warfare where combat takes place in and between ditches for protection. So That's the thing. So, remember I told you the U.S. Civil War, you had generals and military planners come from Europe, and they came and they watched how we fought. And, and towards the middle and the end of the U.S. Civil War, more and more you started seeing, especially the South, would dig trenches to keep their troops safe because the Confederates had like hardly any manpower. Man died in the Confederacy. They couldn't really replace them that well. And so they started thinking, maybe we should keep our guys alive. And so they dug trenches because Earth is very good at absorbing cannons and bullets. Well, they're going to see how effective this is at holding ground and protecting their troops. And they're going to adopt it in World War I, especially when they figure out guns are super deadly when you try to run into them. Some of the first battles of World War I are going to end entirely the idea of having a mounted cavalry on horses. They're going to try it, but the horses apparently are not immune to machine guns, and it ends badly. Totalitarianism, political systems where centralized government controls all aspects of life. I mean, everything, through suppression of civil rights and the use of propaganda. In the First World War, this is nothing new, but the press is only going to put out good stories about your country, your leadership, the battles. You might have lost the battle poorly, but you won't know that because the papers will tell you how victorious you guys were. So it's all about keeping people under the lie to keep supporting it. And so we're going to see that this is going to be ballooned in the 20th century. And I'm sure it's quite alive today. Trying to remember what propaganda means in Latin. It's like things to be done or something. I don't remember. My Latin's not as good as it used to be. Whatever.
So there's like medieval warfare versus modern warfare.
Well, I mean, a lot of the old ideas are going to go away because, like, even like places like Poland, they still had like trained cavalry with like spears. Guys would go to the military academy and they would still learn how to like ride on horseback with a sword, like in the Civil War. You know, you're galloping and like take somebody's head off and stuff. But
You never got the
Machine guns.
yeah, machine guns, barbed wire, landmines, gas. You know, you're not going to be doing that. Airplanes. Very, very, very accurate long-range explosive artillery that's set on suspension with rifle barrels that can send very accurate shells that'll detonate. It doesn't do so well. They got so good at killing people, the only thing that they could do was just hide in the ground. And that's going to lead to tanks. So you're going to have one technology is going to get rid of one style of fighting. And they got to come up with another technology to overcome that style of fighting, and so on and so forth.
Until there isn't a technology.
All of that. People are always killable, unfortunately. It's the curse of mortality. I mean, that's
Teleportation.
Teleportation.
Just teleport into their.
I think you're just gonna have to wait till the end times. All right, so hey, here's another fancy library. I don't know where these are at. I don't know. I got these off Google Images. I think I was just looking at fancy libraries. All right, so slide 2 out of 4, another vocabulary set. So once again, if you know what a word means, don't write it down. But if you're not too sure, keep in mind that your project's a test grade, but your future quiz grades may come from these slides. Like may as in they will, I guess. So yeah, they will. I don't think I have Quizlet sets for these, so I'll have to do it all from scratch for you. All right, so fascism. Ooh, man. Yeah, the word fascism comes from, you might remember from 9th grade, the Latin word fasces, which if you remember, it was like an axe with bundled rods around it. And the bundled rods were supposed to represent the unity of the Roman people, law and order, whereas the axe showed the power of the government's ability to take life for the sake of law. And so, like, yeah, Romans, whenever somebody was found guilty of treason, they would unbundle these things and take the axe and lop off the guilty person's head. And so this will be the symbol of fascist in Italy. But the term fascist we also use, of course, for like Spain and, of course, Nazi Germany. And you can even say Imperial Japan during this time, during World War II. Political ideology, which mythologizes the nation. So the nation takes on religious aspects. Your salvation is found in the fatherland, right? It's a big thing. And also race, though, racial identity. So what they call scientific racism, which wasn't science, but they would use the aspects and the speech and like the trappings of science to try to pretend that their people were the chosen people and superior to all others. Characterized by strong centralized government and a dictator as its leader. It would often have aspects of aspects of socialism, but it would have a little capitalism mixed in. So what they would do is it was like a partnership between private companies and the government. It's like, hey, businessman, we'll let you get rich, but you better do what the government tells you to. And if you do what we tell you to, we'll make sure you're rich. And so you're going to see this partnership between big government, big industries. Self-determination. The idea that people live in a region have the right to form their own government. This is going to be one of the products of World War I. And it's going to be a call for the end of empires. This term, we specifically think of an American president, Woodrow Wilson, for calling on countries to let people go from their empires and let them be their own. Like, hey, leave them alone, let them have their own country. They have their own culture, area where they live, language, history, sometimes religion, just let them live their own way. Appeasement. This is to make concessions to avoid conflict. This is where a country will do almost anything to avoid getting into a fight. And we see this before World War II. People were literally letting Hitler have other people's countries if they would just would leave them alone. Well, it didn't work. Bo, you okay?
Good.
All right. So, total war. When all of society is in production of and the consequences of war. We see the birth of this in modern terms in the U.S. Civil War. Sherman's famous March to the Sea, when he's going through the South and he is burning down cities as he goes through. He has his soldiers kill everybody's cattle, burn their crops, tear up their railroads, everything to break. So even the civilians have war declared on them. I see this in the Great Wars as well. Economic depression. When an economy suffers from extremely high unemployment and business failures. And so we're going to see after the First World War, the worldwide economy is going to do okay for a little bit, and then it's going to collapse. Big collapse, worldwide collapse. And that desperation and poverty, it's going to help lead to the Second World War. There's a lot of things that lead to each one of these. So don't be fooled into thinking that they happen to vacuum and one thing led to another. It's multiple things go into it. All right, let's go to 3 of 4. So take them in small chunks, right? All right. What's this one? Okay, yeah. This, I'm trying to remember. These are soldiers, I think during World War One training, but I'm trying to remember what the building is. I think this is the building where they held one of the World's Fairs. And the World Fairs were like these huge events where they would have all of these booths where people would show off like things that like innovations in science and art and technology and culture from around the world in kind of like a competition of like see what we can do. And you have these nurses there too. So these might be soldiers. I think they're soldiers getting ready to go back to the front. They were injured or they were sick, and now they gotta get ready to go back to war again, which is probably a lot harder the second time around when you've been hurt. All right. So causes for World War One. I'm going to show y'all some videos on this tomorrow. Some extra credit videos on World War One, like some of the causes. It's complicated. It took a lot of human tragedy, and also it's kind of the product of it's a product of a lot of things. It's a product of ideas, competition, but mostly you could say it's a product of empire, of secret treaties, governments trying to mess each other over, imperialism. European nations were in a fierce competition for colonies in Africa and Asia. France and Germany nearly go to war over Morocco. So after Napoleon was defeated, European nations got together and they looked at the world's globe and they were like, they gave each country a portion of the world to have as their colonial empires. But then in the 1800s, Germany forms itself up from multiple small countries into one large country known as Germany. And Germany didn't just become like another country on the block. They became the best in many ways. They had the best schools. The rest of Europe and even America was trying to mimic what they were doing. They had the best military. It was something like 90% of all military manuals in the world were made by the Germans. They had the best industries in Europe. They were doing very well, and they were getting rich. And they were demanding to have an empire like the rest of Europe too. And so that's going to build a lot of tension. Europe doesn't know what to do with them. They're not in the old agreement. So they're trying to suppress this new great country. And it didn't turn out too well because they're a little aggressive. Nationalism. Great Britain and Germany were in competition over industrial dominance of the world markets. So Great Britain had been, remember, they were the guys who were in the lead of the Industrial Revolution. They were trading things made in factories all over the world. They already had the markets. They were like, this is our territory. But now Germany's coming along, and they're making good stuff too. And they want their stuff to sell. So there's economic interest here. Germany and France were in dispute over territories like Alsace-Lorraine, and this is going to be due to a dispute with the Franco-Prussian War. Before Germany unified, their Kaiser, their emperor, their king, and his lead advisor, Wilhelm, Bismarck. Remember, we had quotes from Bismarck. Wilhelm and Bismarck are going to invade France, and within a matter of days, they are going to completely annihilate the French army. They're going to take over Paris, and they're going to cut off chunks of France for themselves. And they're going to use a modern form of warfare that looks more like modern fighting, where you have infantry moving forward, hiding behind things to cover them. Well, you had the French troops standing up in line getting shot, kind of like the old wars. So totally demount, new form of warfare. They had cartridged rifles that could fire long distance, very accurate, hold multiple rounds in the rifle, while the French were still muzzle loading, which is pretty slow. And it's It's kind of hard to do while you're hiding. You got to at least take a knee while you're doing it. I guess you could do it laying down, but it'd be kind of hard. All right, last one of the day, kids. And here they are in Paris. I think that's the Louvre, if I remember right, or it's another building. And here you have the emperor, and there's Bismarck. We've had a few quotes from him. And they just kicked France's behind, totally annihilated their military. And so here you have and this is right before Prussia unites its neighbors into Germany. And so after this small country beats up one of the strongest powers in all of the world, and then they unite to become a bigger country. Like I said, there's a lot of anxiety about Germany. There's a lot of anxiety, and they are very proud. Like you see, they're holding up these swords. It was a tradition in German colleges where they had like a game of chicken. So you and your friends would get together and they'd hold up one of these sabers, and your whole job was to stand still and look up at the sky, and your friend was supposed to take the saber and thwack you right in the face and cut your face open with it. And if you flinched, you were a coward. But if you took the mark and you wore the scar on the face the rest of your life, it was like a badge of honor, like a badge of manhood. So these guys were like really about just no fear. I'm going to get out there and fight. They had this thing too where like they would do this salute in the military, and what they would do is they would pound their chest as hard as they could with the right hand on the left, and they had to stop it actually because they found that from years of especially the older soldiers, when they pound their chest too much, they actually started to lactate on the left side because it was overstimulation. So that was probably not what they were looking forward to. All right, last one. Militarism, increased European nationalism. Remember, that's like almost the worship of your nation, led to an arms race. You got all of this industry. Science is taking off. And so you're using new industry and new science to make weapons that people never could have imagined in the past. All European nations, except for Great Britain, had large standing armies. These are expensive. And if there's one thing you know from history, is whenever kings or countries hold on to big armies, they feel like they have to use them. It's human nature. You have it, it's expensive, it looks nice and shiny, you got to use it sometime, right? So generals developed various plans. Like in Germany, they developed something called the Schlieffen Plan that promote quick mobilization of troops in case of war. And we're going to talk, okay, so this plan basically was like, Germany's like, okay, we're surrounded by enemies. If we go to war, everyone's going to invade us at once. So what we need to do is have a plan where it might be a little internationally illegal, but we're going to go out and take over our enemies as fast as we can to make sure they don't get us first. And that's actually going to help really blow up World War I. We're going to see this, especially in the videos on Friday. Now, the alliance system. Alliances between the great powers in Europe were complicated and shifted constantly during the 20th century. They intended to keep balance in Europe. That was the whole name of the game after Napoleon was beat up. How do we keep another Napoleon from taking over the world? Well, we make alliances. We all agree to defend one another. But the thing is, not everybody was on everybody's side. And so you're going to have the Triple Entente. Great Britain, France, and Russia. They all agree, if you go to war, I go to war. If you need defense, I will help you. And you'll notice France is on the west side of Germany, Russia's on the east. So like I said, Germany is surrounded. On the other side, you have the Triple Alliance. Germany, Austria-Hungary, which is like right next to Germany in the south, and the Ottoman Empire. Now, the Ottomans are, remember, that's that old Muslim, Middle Eastern, North African, Near Eastern empire. But at this point in time, they're not doing so well. They're kind of falling apart. They lost a lot of their national sovereignty. Other countries were coming in and kind of taking what they wanted. Their military wasn't really usable. Their sultans spent a lot of their time not caring about anything, just kind of living for pleasure and stuff. So it wasn't really stitched together that well. And they're going to have various independence movements, and the rest of the world's going to carve them up pretty hard. So you got these two sides. You got these competitions. You have this history, and it's all leading up to World War I. So we're going to end there today, kids, and we'll pick up on some more on Monday. Make sure you turn in any assignments you're missing and work on your project. See you later.